Reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network. You're listening to Wildstar Reporter on the MMO Reporter Network. Brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/MMO Reporter. And by Doghouse Systems. Choose your weapon with Doghouse Systems. Hello everyone, Chris here from Wildstar Reporter, and I'm very excited to bring you a very special episode 8 of Wildstar Reporter. This show is going to be an interview with Jeremy Gaffney, president of Carbine Studios. So this one covers a broad range of topics, and we kind of started halfway into a conversation. We kind of just said hello and got right to talking. So it starts off a little funny, but we get going and have a really, really great conversation about Wildstar, what they're trying to do, and a little bit about Jeremy's background and what he's brought into the game from his history with Turbine and other games. So enjoy. I really enjoyed talking to him, and I hope that you enjoy the interview. It was a crazy night last night in the end of the beta. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had like one dev assigned minimally to each server to make sure each server got hit for each faction, and then just gave them cheats and said go to town, and that was actually quite a hoot. And we got to sneak in a little extra stress testing as well while we were at it. So
yeah, a little bit. I think I maxed out at about 6 or 7 frames per second.
Yeah, so. I'd imagine that'd probably be about right for we hit the. Normally we see concurrencies on the continent maps at being something like 600 or 700, and that was the amount of people actually in town at the time. So it's good to actually get the stress conditions, because something like that will happen in live, and it doesn't stink to be able to kind of drive to it as well.
Right, and it would have been nice too for damage control and oh crap, what's going wrong now, and jump in and test out all that sort of stuff as well.
Yep. We're going to do some more stress testing actually coming up over the next few weeks as well. So that's actually nice. Our head of operations just posted about that on our forums not too long ago.
Yeah, it's a cool way to do it too with the Ops Week, and just let everybody know that you will have these sort of intermittent, sparse openings where the server is going to be open. And the big thing about this is that, the community needs to understand is that this is the time when these tests are for you. Yes, beta test is always supposed to be testing, yes. But this specifically, this isn't going to be that little bit that you can go in and play with your character. It's going to be the little bit that you can go in and help the team test this one specific thing. Yeah,
I really liked how Cougar actually kind of positioned that, because he's done that before, and it's nice having that sort of clear, like, hey, will this be fun? Probably, if you're perverse, and if you like, having us pull the internet plug 12 times in a row to see what happens on the servers and stuff, then yeah, it's fun. But if you're a normal person, Head Start is real close.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you've been involved in some games that were pretty influential in my gaming history, Asheron's Call being a pretty big one for me. What do you think you learned from founding Turbine and working on some of those first MMOs that you can now put into practice with Wildstar?
I'm actually rocking randomly I think a mid or late 90s Turbine hat today, completely randomly, because I forgot I was going to be doing a Skype interview, and so that's relevant to my wardrobe today. I still have my old Olthoy shirts as well from 1993. I think we made those or something crazy like that. So carry over some Turbine things. I think that we did very well there is we always had good community interaction. I wouldn't say always, actually, but I think we learned over time to have good community interactions. That was a lot more in the wild west of the internet, where we built Asheron's Call expecting that people would have to dial up on modems to central servers and stuff, because the internet didn't really exist. I mean, it was DARPANET in like the very early stages back in 93, 94, when we were just getting going. And so community interaction, no one really knew how that worked. And it's kind of interesting to track that over time, because in the sort of Ultima Online / maybe EverQuest era, there were a lot of really negative experiences that companies had interacting with fans, where things would go horribly wrong. necromancy posts for Ultima Online that RAF still gets haunted about today, where they're like, "We're doing necromancy," and no, they pulled it out, and because it was incomplete messaging, fans fed on that and had a real issue with it. Or the infamous one of the devs from a game which we won't mention. When I wasn't on it, was the infamous "Shut up and pay me my $10 a month, little man. My Porsche needs a performance upgrade." That's not the best dev quote to have out there and kind of highlight. And so I think a lot of teams got very paranoid in that era about community interaction. And we exist now in an era where it's much more open and fluid. And I think you'll see more dev teams doing what we're doing, which is just being very active and, erring on the side of just honesty and complete communication, and having a good time and not being scared to kind of show that, as opposed to being bundled real tight and more worried about risk and exposure than you are about just like, okay, here's what's going on. We're going to goof up some stuff. We're going to get some stuff right. And hopefully you'll be along with us for the ride, because, we'll earn your trust over time by just not bullshitting you.
But that's something that Carbine does that a lot of other companies don't do, to be blunt. There's a lot of companies who are incredibly controlled in their message, and it's a big risk for Carbine to take, to be as open as you are, because of the way that the community can be nowadays. I don't see the Wildstar. There's factions of the Wildstar community like that, but it's a big risk. Do you feel that risk has been worth it for you?
I'd say absolutely. And I don't think it's that big of a risk, in the sense that I think you'll see more of the industry moving over to it. You already see that. I mean, League of Legends, I think, was really good about the devs are in the game and actually playing in matches. And there's people in here like, oh, yeah, I remember this match where I had against so-and-so, developer.
Right.
That's a very different experience than the GM Darwin era, where everybody was scared to have any interaction whatsoever with the fans, because what if something went wrong? And again, if you deal with crises, can be opportunities too. If we have a big kerfluffle that goes horribly wrong, we'll use it as a staging point to be like, look, here's how competent companies deal with this kind of stuff when it goes wrong, and do it publicly. And you probably end up with as much positive out of that as negative. If we have to fire a game master for giving away free stuff in the game, which is what the UO had to deal with back in 2002 kind of era, 2001 kind of era, maybe a little before that. Doing that right is an opportunity to show off, here's how you can handle yourself with ethics in a public forum. Hopefully we never have to deal with that kind of stuff. But if you do, I don't know. I think there's a benefit to publicly embracing that kind of risk.
Right.
And I think you'll see, Path of Exile, those guys do a great job of, constant dev interaction, that sort of stuff. You see a number of other teams doing it well, and if the teams that do that well succeed, everybody else will follow. That's the way of our industry since time immemorial.
And you also made a choice to come out and announce the game and do some press on it quite early. Gamescom, I think it was 2011 was when you first announced it, and then followed that up with a pretty big booth at PAX that same year. Why put the news out there so early, and then you went dark for a little while? There was some time after that where there wasn't no news, but it wasn't that same, post-announcement news we expect.
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I think one of the things that you need to do, we make big bets on games, and sometimes what you want to do is, see how well received that bet is going to be. And so there's a couple of factors. Why announce in 2011? In part, we probably thought we were going to ship sooner than we were. I can't remember what our targeted launch date was at the time, but I'm sure it is not June 3rd of 2014. But even with that, there's a desire to sort of, it's always been prove it for us. You're a new IP, you're a new developer, you don't know what response is going to be, and the earlier you can have it known that you're existing, and the earlier you can actually start gathering data, the better. What we did with announcement is we wanted to gather enough hype and buzz to get about 20,000 people into the beta, alpha and then beta, to be able to competently test the game over a long period of time. We're an iterative team, and so trying to get that mass of people, which is a lot of people when you are starting from zero. It's not a lot of people now. Now that we've cycled probably, I don't know, a million or so people through the game, now that we've had hundreds of thousands, 500,000 plus just in the last couple of weeks. It's a lot different, but at the time it was, look, we just need to get people in the game so they can help us spend a couple of years in alpha testing. And so that was probably the single reason behind an announcement more than any other kind of thing. Also, you want to gauge the market. Are you going to be well received? Do people get it? Do they think your game's cool? Do they not? And you can only really do that with that sort of initial burst. So it's probably a combination of clever planning and and time frames running long and that kind of stuff. Nothing ever
Right.
ships on time in never mind the MMO industry, but the gaming industry, and never mind the gaming industry, but the tech industry. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that was probably a factor too.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to talk about real quick was the business model that you chose. Which is something that is no longer, surprisingly to me, no longer the norm in the industry, which is to have a subscription model. And then there are variations on different ways that you can approach that. Your way with, following similarities to Eve with being able to buy your subscription with in-game stuff and all these sorts of different VIP models that different games have. Was there a really strong internal debate about the business model, or was it pretty clear that everybody was on board right from the get-go?
No, I'm pretty sure that any given decision we've made over the last 5 years or so, there's been a serious internal debate about it. It's kind of how our team rolls. But from a standpoint of there's a couple of tricks of that. One of which is what you really want to do is let people pay how they want to pay, and you want to be as broad as possible while still making money, because that is the goal at the end of the day. At the end of the day is you want to make money. Thank goodness in our industry, the best way to make money, in fact, the only way to make money in the long haul, is actually have a good game. Good game design and good game precepts lead to people playing for a long time, and that's the way to make money in our business. It's not like big marketing campaign. It's not sell a bunch of boxes and you don't care if people quit a month later. And so the business model kind of has to support that as well. So I think the strengths of our business model are you know that the costs are covered on a per person basis, because if you're in a pure free to play market, you don't know how many free players you have. They all cost about the same to support as a paying customer. But you end up with this weird dichotomy where maybe 5% of your user base, 10% of your user base is paying the weight for the entire 90% of free players when they're checking stuff out. And so that means in free to play, sometimes you have games that have made a mass amount of money. Sometimes you have games that have made a lot of revenue but no profit, because you're carrying this weight of all these people who aren't actually making your game profitable. And sometimes you have really spectacular failures where you can't support the mass of people who are playing for free. And so your game looks really big, but ends up dying on the vine because of that. It's a very high-risk model. The reason why, you say the trend is away from box and subs, but in practice, there's a reason why every AAA game launches box and subs. I mean, what's the big AAA game that's launched free-to-play? It's kind of tough to put a finger on it. There are certainly games that have done well at that down the road, but they grew there. There aren't many that came out the gate with it. And it's because if you're going to put tens of millions of dollars into investing in a title, the box helps pay that back very rapidly. It's not a user thing. Users may or may not like it, but but from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And then for support costs, making sure you can pay your server costs and all that kind of stuff. And you're really, I think more important than server costs and more expensive, it's live team costs. The way to succeed in many markets right now, if you look at the Chinese market, it's because most of the games have moved to monthly updates, worst every 2 months. Some of them have moved to every 2 weeks or even every weekly update. I really think that we're going to find that's the wave of the future, doing more what Guild Wars 2 has done, and and really what League of Legends has done is doing that. And it's not impossible to do that in a free-to-play model, but it's much, 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 much harder.
Right.
And so it's tricky. And from a user perspective, we like our model because it's got that great trinity of making the three people happy that you want and pissing off the one you want, which is the guy who wants to play for free, awesome, trades his gold pieces away to someone else for a sub, a cred. Yeah. The person who wants to buy gold legally can do so, but not from us, not from a farmer, but from just by trading cred to other players for gold pieces. Hey, he's got a legal way of doing that now that's not scammable, which is great. The third person who's happy, of course, is our CFO for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. And then gold farmers are pissed off because it undercuts the gold farming market. Right. Because they don't care about credit, of course. Everything they do is on stolen credit cards. That's how come, they don't care how many boxes they buy. They don't care how many how many months they get. They're banned within a month anyway. But they're buying it all fraudulent credit cards. And so they both aren't giving us any money, and they aren't adding anything to the economy at all. They're doing is taking from it, destroying credit ratings, and upping GM costs and all that kind of stuff.
With ESO's launch recently, there's been a huge botting problem in that game, which may be connected to this in some sort of way. Do you feel that the model that you're coming forward with will help with that as the game launches? Do you think that we'll see less bots possibly in Wildstar?
I think that how many bots we will see or not is going to depend more on, is our anti-bot technology up to snuff or not. Everybody thinks there are during beta, even open beta, but nobody's botting during those times, or not in bulk because there's no money in it. Farming beta gold isn't going to do anybody any good. And so we'll see on launch day if we get a huge host of it or not. Obviously, we build in a lot of systems. The fact that mining nodes can turn out to be on the back of a giant ore worm who rears up and then eats you. It's very hard to write bots to kind of deal with that sort of stuff, which is about a quarter of the reason why we did that. The other three quarters just being it's fun getting eaten by a mining node. And so we'll see how those things work. It'll damp down their profit margins, which makes them less likely to come in the game. And so if we are assiduous in terms of being able to ban them rapidly, detect them, then that will help as well. A lot of things that need to work out well to see, hey, what's our bot problem going to look like 2 weeks after launch or 2 months after launch? The fact that we've had none to date is good, but we shouldn't have had a ton. We should have had some test people in there trying to test stuff, trying to make up bots for launch. And we found a few of those and promptly banned them. So our detection works as right now. We think it works 100%. We'll find out what we missed when it goes out post launch, and we'll see what happens. We think we've laid all the groundwork well though to come out on top of that. But we'll see.
Now, the other thing about subs is, and you mentioned this, live teams. What are your plans for those players? I'm sure you've had a few people come up to you at conventions or at events, say, I'd love to play the game, but that monthly sub, it's really hard for me to justify paying that. What sort of content are you going to have for those people?
So what we're trying to do is tie to a monthly basis ginormous updates to the best of our ability. If you've been playing in the beta, and bless you for being knowledgeable, by the way. I love interviewers who actually, know what's going on in the game and stuff is blissful. Over the last 6 months, we've done monthly updates, and we've done that for, we haven't really broadcast it as being monthly, but there's a reason we've been doing that. And each one has been introducing, zones worth of content. Each one has been had 90 odd pages of patch notes probably on average. Certainly last three was, I think it was 72 that we did last month, 92 the month before, 94 the month before. Large scale updates. It's because we've been training ourselves for those post-launch updates. And so we'll have Blighthaven and some other stuff hitting in the first month. We're aiming that in particular to be a large update. And then we have another big update coming the month after. We have another big update coming the month after. And we'll see how good we are as a dev team about sticking to our schedule on that front. And it's not impossible things shift by a week or so. And if we're off by a bunch, then that means we screwed something up in terms of build deployment or QA time or something like it.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things we're really thankful for is post-launch is we'll be able to get a PTR up and running, because when we do have hiccups on builds, it's nice when that happens on a subset of testing. During beta, that kind of has to happen with everybody in there in the thick of it in real time, and we run around like idiots hotfixing stuff for a couple hours after a build goes up. Makes no one happy, especially since it's often in the middle of the night our time. And so so having a public test realm up to eat some of that, so we have a full month of testing of each build before it goes up, that's going to help a lot too.
Yeah.
But the goal is to tie that to subscription. Hey, it gives you a much more clear thing about here's what you're getting for the time you put in for earning your cred. Here's what you get for the time that you put in, or the money that you put in if you're paying a sub. It's tied a bit more so that's more direct. And the goal is not do tiny updates. The goal is not do temporary updates. The goal is do fundamental large updates on a regular basis, which is something I think no one's really managed to succeed at in the market yet. We've done it for 6 months. Let's see if we can do it for the next 6 months during live.
Right. Rift had a pretty good run in the first say 6 months or so of their launch, but then things sort of have petered out after that into longer and longer between each of the updates. I mean, they were monthly for a couple months, and then month and a couple weeks. Is that something you're actively trying to try and keep that schedule a little tighter, or you're just going to have to be flexible based on the community?
We need to be flexible based on the community in part, actually. We have half our team is tuned towards pre-work, doing the pre-production, because you need to have a long pipeline for this stuff. You can't just magically invent like, hey, in 2 weeks, let's knock out a brand new raid or zone or whatever. Yeah. You need to have a concept art process that goes through to laying out the levels in gray box mode, to designing it, to designing the encounters, to have players go through it, find out it sucks, tear half that out, redo it again. Like, if you're not in that stage early on, you're going to find yourself under the heel of that. I've actually walked through with our team leads on the dev side the next 16 monthly updates, seeing what's in the game for each of them. Because you need to. If you don't,
Right.
there are teams out there who think they're going to be able to patch in all this stuff magically, and it just don't happen. Like, you need to have it in the hopper. But if you're not reactive, you die too. And so we have actually half our team working on that stuff, and then half our team is working on specifically focusing on where are the biggest areas in the game where things need polish. Oh, here's a particularly grindy stretch of quests in a mid-level zone. Well, let's go turn that into the best stretch of quests in the game by putting extra polish and effort on that. Deploy that in a month. Well, that's quite doable. And if constantly you're taking the worst area in the game and turning it into one of the best areas in the game, it's very hard, I think, to not succeed with that over time, because you're constantly catching up with, oh, yeah, we did that zone 3.5 years ago. It really needs an overhaul. You get in a much better state with that. And so in my mind, that's kind of the goal. You're real smart to mention Rift, actually. They did something that I do not know if it was serendipitous or if I don't know if it was well designed, but whatever it was, it looked clever as hell to me as an outside observer. And that is when they launched, they did a big patch 29 days, I think it was 28 days after launch, and it hit their community at a perfect time. They addressed a lot of issues that had come up during beta. There was a nice meaty substance to it. It took about maybe 5-6 days to play through the content that came out with it. What this means is that big hump of people who were just about to decide are they going to subscribe or not for the first time. They said, well, hell, at least I'll play through the patch and find out. And so they stuck. They had very good, anecdotally, I didn't work there or anything like that, but from a distance, it sure looked like that was effective for them in terms of having people opt into the game and stick around for longer, which, is the lifeblood of our business. But if you're not able to sustain that month over month, what happens the month where you don't do that is kind of the question. And so ours isn't really gauged to be exactly that, because we think people decide to opt in or not. Are they having good time over the long haul? We wouldn't move a patch up just to try to hit some. Oh, here's a peak of subscribers hitting a re-up timer, that kind of stuff. But that was either very smart or lucky, one of the two. And I think I think that's why they tried to double down on that and do that on a monthly basis is probably about right. So that's a good insight. I haven't heard that insight from anybody not actively in the industry.
Well, okay, I want to talk about dungeons because we're getting close to our time here. I've talked to friends and trying to describe the dungeons in Wildstar, and I use the first boss of Storm's Talon's Lair as an example because that boss is harder than many of the raid bosses that I've run. Rift was the one I rated in the most. The 10-mans in Rift, that first boss is harder than most of those. Do you feel that the game adequately prepares players for that difficulty level by the time they hit 20, or is that more for the more hardcore players, the dungeons?
It's a combination of both. There's a reason the first monsters you see having telegraphs is for a reason, because don't stand in the fire. That's a raid mechanic in many games. WoW's built a living on that mechanic of don't stand on the thing that's on fire. And we try to teach that mechanic right off the bat. We teach interrupting right off the bat. And we give incentives for that to say, like, hey, if you interrupt a monster while he's doing a cast, if he's in the state, bam, he turns purple, you do extra damage. We broadcast that in part because we'd like our game to be a game that anyone can get in and play, but by the time you leave it, you're going to be skilled. You're going to be able to handle the tough stuff. Now, having said that, there's a leap for sure when you go into that dungeon. And part of the reason we have that leap is because that's when you need to really start communicating. The thing we want you to learn, you've learned don't stand in the red stuff. That's the easy bits. Now you're learning taunting. You're learning really group communication more than anything else. Okay, we're going to go in this fight. You're going to kill these priests this stage, and they're going to turn these blue energy balls, so dodge them as well. You're going around, or lead the lightning strikes over to these guys to try to use that to help you destroy them. We do those mechanics really early on because in part it's part of that training regime, and also we think there's a huge market of just bored ass MMO players out there who have done it all before, and they need challenges. They're leveling up and making outside world content that is challenging and it's also doable by newbies. We've done our damnedest at that actually as well, because that's why we have the big glowing red giant monsters around that fill up half your quest bar if you can kill them. Yeah, those are glowing red because it's like, hey, experienced MMO players, this is your game. Come take these out so you don't have to go kill 20 weak monsters. And hey, new MMO player, here, kill these 20 weak monsters, and you're going to have a good time doing it. And maybe by the time you've killed your 20th, you've learned to, not stand in the fire or attack from behind or the other, what each of the little combat puzzles is trying to show you how to do. That's the balance we try to hit. But those dungeons are in there mostly for hardcore folks, and then hardcore folks bringing their newbie friends along with them so they can explain what the heck's going on.
Right.
because I don't think a newbie's really even going to find the dungeon entrance. You know what I mean? Staggering around the world trying to do that. They're having a grand time super jumping off the loft-type cliffs or something. They're not, it's an extra challenge to get there.
Yeah.
I'm incapable of a short response, by the way, too. So sorry for your time frame.
That's okay. The dungeons are a challenge. They're hardcore. Veteran mode brings back all those dungeons for level 50 players. Are you changing the mechanics to make it more interesting of the dungeons and the bosses, or just harder? Yeah. Oh, that's
changing the mechanics, because if it's just more hit points and more, it's just a longer tank and spank, that's not really fun for anybody, frankly. That's just an exercise. And, that's lazy design that basically puts a barrier saying, hey, we want you to spend some extra time gearing up before you can get to raids. So it's got to have new mechanics to be interesting on that. And so the guys have done, I think, a pretty good job of, not just for dungeons, but also adventures, making sure that there's, those veteran modes actually have extra challenge to them by dint of new mechanics, or by dint of having some extra stuff you haven't seen in the Lobby versions of them. Recycled content is great from a standpoint of it being relatively easy to make, but it's not great from a standpoint, players see through the illusion of, hey, now you're fighting pink, boars that are level 78 instead of the white boars that you fought at level 30 or whatever. So we try not to do that as much as possible. Adventures even more so than dungeons.
So my guild and I have been debating the merits of attunements for raids since the news came out. Can you describe what attunements are for our listeners who might not know, and maybe give an example?
So attunements are basically a way, they're a benefit to a couple different people, few of which are actually the people doing the attunements. The benefits of having an attunement, this is a set of challenges, usually solo challenges, sometimes some small group challenges that you have to do to prove your worthiness to get into a raid. From a design standpoint, it's good because you can assure certain gear levels and that kind of things by the time people are first doing a raid of saying, hey, you have to have done this veteran dungeon, or one at X, Y, or Z. And so you have a better idea that people aren't going to just walk in totally undergeared. From a design standpoint, they're also good because it saves people getting up to level, cap and then having no clue how to play their character and then getting carried by a guild through the entire raid process. Right. Well, no, a lot of this stuff is stuff you actually have to do yourself. They're useful to guilds because that if people have done the attunement on their own, that's often a requirement for guild membership in the raiding guild and that kind of stuff, is that people are clued enough to do that stuff on their own. And so it's a benefit for guilds knowing that the people that they're getting have a reasonable level of competency as they come to them, or implied level of competency. But that doesn't always mean attunements are fun to do, because it's a set of hoops you have to jump through as the player actually doing the attunement. And so our expectation is, they hit a sweet spot. Raiding guilds who've done this stuff 1,000 times in other games, they're going to blaze through that stuff pretty quick because they're used to it and they can pretty trivially knock it off. There's a sweet spot there of guilds maybe, not quite up to that level, but pretty close to it, who, they're a fun set of challenges often, which can be done as a group together. And then there's a level of guild for which it'll be annoying because it's like, we have to do, the coordination of, we only barely had enough people to do the raid. Now one guy dropped out, and so now we have to take a new guy and run him through the whole attunement process again, and that's no fun. That's probably the sweet spot of pain for it, where, or the argument against it is that. And then you get the noobs who will never even get to it, or they'll finally get to it 2 years after launch, be like, woohoo, I'm attuned for Molten Core, and when that hasn't been run for a while. So, I got my Molten Core attunement pretty late in the game, actually, so I shouldn't even say that. For users not know, that's not one of our raids. It's a WoW raid. That's the first raid I think they launched with effectively.
Yes. 40-man, too. Hey, way to pull that reference. Okay, I've got a couple community questions here that I want to get to before we end things off here. First, from Vig. The crafting system, as it stands right now, is wonderful, but people will out-level it fairly fast as 20 and 40-man progression ramps up. What are your plans for new patterns being added when it comes to that point?
So we have some plans in the hopper for doing basically more Elder Game style level crafting that's been in test actually for a little bit. And so I'm not sure which build it's going to deploy in, but we're definitely aiming to sort of beef that up to yet another level. I mean, it looks right now like we have Elder level crafting, and we do, but we have grand plans kind of beyond that to make sure that there's as deep a game for that as there is for combat or anything else. Yeah. And so so I know the guys have some things in the hopper around that front for an early month, and it's a grand question because certainly we can do more. I love our crafting leveling system, by the way, because is it's, for those who haven't done it, it's a mixture of earning crafting XP, but also unlocking achievements, and you get a certain number of achievements. Effectively, you unlock different powers you can do in crafting, that sort of stuff. It's quite a clever advancement system.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised if we don't see some variant of that in like leveling, in, if not in our game, some other game at some point, because I think it's pretty clever.
The tech tree style of for the crafting is actually my favorite way to go through it. I don't think I've felt as much wonderful direction in my leveling my crafting in a game before. It's always been quite scattershot or build this thing a whole bunch of times, but now there's a progression through it, and I really like it.
Yeah, that came up about 2 years ago. I'd say we first implemented that, and then sort of working on it and seeing the variations, and the which sounds long ago, but it's fairly late in the dev game when it takes a long time to build these things. I really thought I don't mean to toot our own horn or anything. I thought it was actually pretty elegant stuff. I gave a lot of praise to the guy who designed that, because I think that was pretty clever stuff. Yeah. If we had done that earlier, I'm not sure we wouldn't have done something similar for paths or for base leveling, because it's a neat way of doing it.
And last community question here from Grepster: will there be class epic quests? That was his favorite part of EverQuest. He just loved going and doing super long quest chains for a badass weapon.
God, I'm a fan of those too. Because I really think, I've always thought that's some of the content that turns out to be very polarizing content. Actually, some people really like those and some hate them, because usually those are quite challenging. It takes a long time. I think the reason they've fallen out of favor in the industry is because people know the caps move up. You add in those kinds of quests early on, and then very often you end up with the rest of your content out leveling it. Now you have this huge investment you made in this quest chain that was only relevant for one class, for one level range, and it can become trivialized or meaningless because it's not giving you a level cap weapon. It's giving you, your level cap was 50 and now it's 60, and so now that quest becomes irrelevant fairly rapidly. So I think that's kind of why there's a falling out of favor. I personally like them a lot, though, and so what we've tried to do around that is it's the item imbuements, where you get a cool sword for your class, and it says, feed me the souls of 500 Dominion, and if you can go PvP and get killing blows in, or just even or do enough damage in PvP, you're going to level that sword up. And it's taken the extreme with the artifacts, where those are effectively the epic quest, except the quest to get them is go kill the end bosses of the raids, and then now the quest starts to be able to, can you power the sword up by getting killing blows, doing strange stuff with it, fighting the right monsters. It sort of sends you on a quest to fully empower the weapon over time. And that happens to also be level cap raising resistant, because if we do a new level cap raise, well, now we can take that same sword and you can power it up into a level 60 version of itself or 1155 version of itself through the imbuement quests. And so now if you can go kill the toughest raid boss in the next thing with it, woohoo, it's going to level up to be, keep its stats relevant even at the higher levels. So you get a bit more permanence to your items at that point too, instead of being like, oh yeah, this was that cool sword I had at level 50, but now cap is level 75, and I could far from give a crap about it anymore. So that's kind of our answer to this sort of epic quest for classes.
And last two questions, real quick here. Your favorite race, class, and path, and then what's your play style?
And so that's varied over time. I would say I started off initially, I've always had a love of the chew. I just think, anything whose quest involved mostly blowing stuff up. And, Psychopathic Hamster is just one of the better, I think, race. And
I love the hamster ball.
The hamster balls are awesome. Did you see the mesh ones that came in the...
yes.
There's some pictures of mine last night. Those are sexy looking. So I've always been a Chewa fan. I've done a lot of different classes at different times, because the Spellslinger is a particular favorite of mine. But I've played, most recently I've been doing an engineer, as Granik engineer when I was playing last night. I was actually just leveling my guy up still in the beta, even while all the hullabaloo was going on in the main towns. I am a natural explorer as my path, but over time I've learned to love Settler and Soldier as well, where I now alternate between those sort of three. I rarely do Scientist because I'm not a big collection kind of style guy, and I'm not a big story guy. And so Scientist, I don't mind them, and I like the buffs they give, but I play them mostly for the buffs, not kind of what the intent is, which is, oh, hey, I unlocked more lore and that sort of thing. And so I've been a mix, actually, and my choices have changed over time. It was very interesting when we first introduced PAS, in 2011, the announcements you were talking about, we sat down press like, okay, we got this cool thing. It's like PAS. It's sort of like, Bartles types kind of thing, where you choose, hey, what sort of person are you and what kind of game, how do you like playing games? And here they are, it's combat, it's exploration, it's collection or story, and it's socializing and building. What do you like? And what was interesting is that everybody had an opinion that was strong. Oh, dude, I'm Explorer, man. I love that. And everybody also had usually it was about two were like, yeah, and I kind of get like, okay, soldier sounds cool and scientist sound cool, but who the heck would ever play a settler? That sounds boring as crap. And what's interesting about that is, it's a new system. It never existed in the history of systems before, and yet people had opinions on it, and they varied, but everybody knew who the hell they were, which is very fascinating. That to me says you've really tapped into some part of human nature when you're able to get that kind of reaction like that.
Right.
And almost everybody had one they loved, two that were like, okay, well, after I'm done with the first one, I'll try those out, and one that were like, that's stupid, no one would ever do it. It was completely weird. Oh, exploring, I play everything Explorer, man, but combat, you have to do combat all the damn time. Who the hell wants 20% more combat? That sounds stupid.
Right.
Be an idiot to choose that. It's kind of interesting.
And what did beta show that was the most popular?
Most popular was Soldier. And again, for a game that has a lot of combat in it, it's interesting that people opt into even more. Yeah. That might come from a perception that, if you're a combat focused, you're gonna be better in PvP. And we've tried to balance the word so that's actually not the case where, you can pretty much end game using whatever the heck you want. Least popular is the Settler, but ours is in a pretty good range. I think the Settler was something like 18% chosen. You'd like them all to be 25%. Yeah. We don't care about Settler being less chosen because we expect Socializer usually gets less chosen, but that's the glue that holds the game together, and it makes everyone's game together better if there's this dude running around popping down campfires to give you buffs and they're, building up the towns and stuff. And so we're going to give them lots of, it wouldn't matter if there was 5% of people playing Settler, we'd still give them lots of love because we just love the benefit that has to the game as a whole.
Cool. Okay.
Not everyone has variants of that.
Yeah, and I know we're short on time here, so probably the most important question I'm going to make you pick the favorite of your children: Team Frost or Team Pappy?
God. So I'm a fan of basic competence. Is what I like to reward. And so I have to say, this keeps me off of Team Pappy if there's anything that's vaguely PvP related or gameplay related. He is pretty much our mascot in terms of if there's a guy in the office you're going to play with who's going to go Leroy Jenkins on stuff, that would be Pappy. My office used to sit next to his, and I swear we could have just had a live feed up of him for the last couple of years because you hear him in there and he's playing through the content and stuff, and theoretically he's doing it to go check out the lore because he's been our lore master for quite a while. You're going to just hear him bellowing the lore, come get some, come get some, oh, take that, oh, take that, oh, ski shot, die. And I got to say, we have thin walls, but you could just hear him bellowing throughout the room on that. So so I got to say, I love the guy to death, but I'm on Team Frost.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come chat with me.
Hey, my pleasure. Good talking to you.